For almost 2 decades, the Carl method has been used by hundreds of thousands of aspiring professionals to bring out the best in them in test taking. It's probably one of the most organized thought process and the most structured base process of testmanship, which is why many top-notchers will attest to the fact that the Carl method has helped them reach the top. Of course, we all know that the Carl method has something to do with comprehension, anticipation, removal, and leverage, which I will discuss with you. However, as times go by, I have come across a beautiful concept of whole brain literacy and thought of putting the power of whole brain literacy in the Carl method. As you may know, thinking is the greatest resource we are capable of as Homo sapiens. Our species is gifted with the ability to think. But they say that even Albert Einstein used only around 25% of his brain. Can you imagine that? What if through the Carl method, we're able to bring out the most parts of your brain so that the whole brain will work for every item you're able to answer? This video will teach you how to use the Carl method using the whole brain approach, the left brain and the right brain. As you know, thinking is the greatest gift of nature to our species, and through the whole brain literacy, we are able to bring out the best in that ability and that capacity to think. The whole brain literacy theory explains that the brain operates, well, anatomically, the brains, the right and the left brain, are actually separated. There's a division. And science is able to find evidences that the left brain and the right brain are operating differently. The left brain, compared with the right brain, operates differently. You know, the left brain is the logical brain, while the right brain is the creative side of the brain. The left brain is very methodical, while the right brain is very artistic. In fact, the left brain is operating on the level of language. It simply loves words, while the right brain actually operates on pictures, on images. Therefore, if you're a person who would like to go into the details of things, you may be left brain dominant. But if you are a person who is more into the imagination, the creativity, the out of the box, then you're more of the right brain dominant person. And don't forget that the left brain is very sequential. Because it's methodical, it's sequential, because it's anchored on logic. However, the right brain is operating randomly. And because it operates in random, it is based on hunch, kutub, pakiramdam. That's why we cannot discount your hunch in test taking. Of course, the left brain is a disciplined side of the brain because it is planned. It is actually structured, while the right brain is more fluid. It's more spontaneous. And what we have to remember about the right brain and the left brain is that the right brain is trying to control emotions. However, the right brain is free with emotions. Now, to recap this, most of the time, we are using our brain only on one side, dominating either our being so logical, our being so methodical, our being so language and words driven, being sequential and too logical, planned and structured, and controlling that emotion. That is when the left brain is at work. But when the right brain is unleashed, it will tap creativity, artistry. Of course, it will look not into words, but into feelings, into images, into pictures. It's random. It can actually tap on the hunch, which is very much related to emotion, because emotional intelligence is not out of brain. In fact, emotions are anchored on the brain, and it is where the hunch are derived from. And of course, the right brain is more fluid and more spontaneous. Imagine a test taker who is able to combine the logical power of the right brain and the emotional hunch-based spontaneity and the creativity of the right. Can you imagine that? Now, let's review the ever-reliable Carl method and see how this method can benefit from whole brain literacy. As many of you are already familiar, the Carl method is a problem-solving process, a way of thinking where you have to understand, comprehension. Here is when you want to understand the question, and here is where you underline keywords. Here is why you try to dig into the question that is being asked in testmanship. Another one is anticipation. Anticipation is powerful when you don't want to be distracted by the distractor, which are actually 3 amongst all the 4 choices. Meaning, anticipation is covering all of these choices so that because of the understanding of the question, you are able to think for an answer that would come without the distracting effect of the distractors. And the moment you see the choices, this is where you find first, not the answer, but you find first the distractors. Because remember, there are 3 distractors and there's only 1 answer. It is more strategic to look for 2 out of the 3 distractors rather than look for 1 answer out of the 4 options. It's called removal. It's a power of elimination. And the rule is you have to reduce your options to just 2, and that's a top-notcher secret. They don't make their final answer unless they reduce their options to just 2. And this is when you actually weigh the 2 options and when you actually do leverage. In leveraging, you are now weighing the 2 options, going back to the question and ask yourself which of the 2 options are better, or which of the 2 options is actually the answer that you're looking for. Now, remember that the Carl method that we have all benefited from is a process of understanding the question, answering the question without the distracting effect of the distractor, removing 2 of the distractors that you're sure that are not possible answers, and when you're down to 2, you're taking the advantage of 2 options to make a possibility of a 50-50 chance that you got the right answer. Now, I'd like to remind you that the left brain is the logical brain, and the right brain is the creative, out-of-the-box brain. Now, what do we do so that the Carl method will benefit from this theory that our 2 sides of the brain actually operates separately? Now, for comprehension to take place, you have to have what we call critical thinking. Critical thinking is what is actually lacking among many test takers. Critical thinking is when you postpone judgment because you want to gather more evidence because you need to be objective. I repeat that. A critical thinker does not jump into the conclusion but would rather postpone, delay judgment because that person still wants to see what's there as evidence objectively available because you want to be objective. On the other side, you want to tap the right side of the brain and attach your test-taking experience into an emotional experience where you are actually building and finding your confidence. All right, by finding your confidence, you're actually tapping the right side of your brain because you're trying to be free of your emotions and allowing your emotion to come into the question. Because sometimes when you read the questions, when you're trying to comprehend and critically think, then you get distracted by the fact that you're already, you're finding it difficult, and then you're making judgment that you're giving up and that you don't know what you're reading about, and then you lose your confidence and then you lose the item. But the right side of the brain will tell you, hey, be free of your emotion, acknowledge that it's difficult, but you can do this, you got this. Then you move on. In critical thinking, remember, don't make judgment unless you are done reading every part of the question. Now, towards anticipation, you're trying to answer without the benefit of the choices, and therefore, what you need to have here is your analysis. Analysis is when you break down. Analysis is breakdown. Here is where you look into every element of the question so that you get deeper into the question before you actually proceed to anticipation. Analysis is when you break down. An analytical mind, analytical brain will tell you what are the details that are right here given as objective information or data in the test that you're trying to answer. Now, here, you may also want to tap the right side of the brain where you need to go back to what were learned in the past, and this is where you actually align the current knowledge that you're deriving from the question that you're answering and align it with the things that you know. And here is why in learning, it is important that you are able to create mind maps, concept maps, all of these illustrations, because the right brain enjoys looking at pictures, looking at mind maps, looking at concepts map, looking at tables, looking at graphs rather than long narratives. But remember that the moment that you're answering the test, you're probably looking at a long question in a narrative where you need to break it down because it's just too much. You cannot swallow an elephant, but you can definitely chop the elephant so that you can break it down into pieces, and that's what you call analysis. And as you analyze, you will be able to top what you remember, and the fluid mind will make you go out of the question and recall what you already know. And now, when you are ready to do removal, that's when you are actually able to reject. And by rejecting, you're using the right side of the brain because you don't reject an option for nothing. You are using the right brain. You are using, you're using a structured process in your mind. You're using sequential logical patterns in your mind so that you will reject an option and conclude for yourself that this is an impossible answer. I'm rejecting it. But as you reject, you cannot reject a possible answer. And this is where, in the removal, you actually need to reflect. You listen to that inner voice telling you, is it really worthwhile mentioning this? Eliminating this option, because this option, if I eliminate and it's actually the answer, then I lose the item. And when you are down rejecting two after thorough reflection, this is where you actually go back, because you're down to two, remember? This is where you go back to the question and see for yourself, because I am sure that there is a clue somewhere in the question which is trying to tell you why you will choose a particular answer. In other words, you have to link one of the two remaining options to what you underlined, to what you were looking at, and to what you regard as a clue as the best answer to the question. Remember, you're not looking for the right answer. You're looking for the best answer. And the best clue to the best answer is in the stem. It is in the question. And after you have linked it and conclude for yourself that, hey, I'm choosing this because of this word which I find in the stem or which I find in the question, this is where you actually go to the last part and derive that same confidence. And this is where you lock. You lock it. Because you know what? Sometimes if you change the answer, you become wrong. Why is that? Because many would attest to the fact that the first hunch is always the best. And remember, the hunch comes from the right brain. But that right brain should be guided by the logic of the left brain. And here is where the whole brain literacy applies to the Carl method that you know, to the Carl method that we are actually now expanding. And I repeat, your left brain should give you the critical thinking to analyze so that you can reject the two options before you link one of the options to a clue which the test writer has implanted and embedded in the question itself. And in so doing, you are using the left side of your brain. On the other side of the brain, you started with confidence. You align what you're reading with what you have learned and what you may already have in your brain. You reflect, you listen to your emotion, let your emotion come into the picture because there's nothing wrong using it. Remember, the hunch is a powerful capacity of the brain. And once you make a decision, you lock it. And I'll tell you, you get the item right. The Carl method is my contribution. It's the journey of my life in trying to help a lot of people bring out the best in them as test takers. And even in many decisions in life, you may want to understand the problem first, anticipate possible options, then eliminate amongst the options that you have enlisted, and make a decision to choose the best option that you have. Because not only are these applicable to the testmanship, which we are trying to help you master, but this is also a good model so that your life can use all these elements, both of the left brain and the right brain, and the Carl method, which is my contribution to your life, to your testmanship, and to your license. God bless you all.